Do you know the reason for why I'm shunned by my fellow glasswalkers? Why they avoid me? Why the sept goes quiet and wary whenever I show myself? It is because I believe that the city fathers and mothers are heralds of the Weaver, sent to guide our tribe and to show us how to shepherd humanity down its destined path. A path that will save Gaia from destruction and usher in a new era of peace, as artificial life is the next evolution of our planet. Why else would they appear in such numbers now? There are reports of them showing up earlier, of course. I've heard stories about the father of Prague from far, far back in time. But after the death of Stanham and the continuation of the Industrial Revolution, that's when they became more common. It is no coincidence that Adam Sutton met the father of London back in 1882, nor that the father was allegedly wearing an anarchy pin on his lapel. Sutton conveniently left out what this symbol was, but since he makes no mention of a black flag, it could be anything. And commonly historians of our tribe believe it to be a circled A, a symbol which didn't become prominent in the anarchist movement until the 1970s. So if this is true, then surely some city parents represent not only the present form of their cities, but also their future form in some sense. And what would be the ultimate power of the Weaver if not precognition? Like the Fates who wove the strands of time, she would be able to predict the many paths reality may take, and guide us accordingly. But I digress. You're not here for my theories, but our history. Allegedly. New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago. City fathers and mothers were found everywhere we looked. Predominantly American, for some reason, but I have personally witnessed the mother of Paris, who only shows herself to foreign visitors. She was a beauty to behold and witness from afar, quite suitable for the city she represents, no? And around the 1880s, the Iron Riders had outlived their usefulness as the Northern Pacific Railroad was finally finished. Its members were still filthy rich, mind you, but as the spirit of the time began to fade, so too did their relevance. Our tribe's new name came instead from the prevalence of glass in cities, the material old but cheaper and easier to mass-produce than ever, and some also say it was because of our constant chasing of our city parents that we got our name. Reflective surfaces are needed to enter the Umbra, you know this, and that's where the spirits dwell, and in a city, well, what is the most common material that reflects anything? Although frankly I think that story is a bit of a stretch. I don't think that's why we got the name to begin with, but rather it's some kind of rationalization used by later generations. I think it was just a symbol of the time. Skyscrapers began cropping up, cities started modernizing, and of course railways were losing steam. What captured the spirit of human ingenuity the most? Glass and steel bars. Could have been the steel workers. Would have been too close to the Iron Riders, though, I guess. What I do know and believe in is that for once our tribe didn't change its name once the Glasswalkers, that is, those guys who kept chasing city parents, weren't the dominant group anymore, if they ever were. We still kept the name. Which just lends even more credence to my theory that it wasn't really about the umbral travel so much as it was a cool name that also encapsulated who we were. I mean, we're in the new millennium, and I don't see us picking a new name anytime soon, do you? Anyway, we survived the 1900s without much ado. Human history can fill you in there. We didn't stand out much. But by the end of the millennia, we saw a camp rise to prominence that I'm sure you've heard of. The Cyberdogs. They were geniuses. At least the original pack of them were, but their followers were less so. I was one of them, but I survived the purge that killed the rest. The Cyberdogs were... well, we were more Weaver-oriented than even the other Glasswalkers. We saw the potential in cybernetic fetishes of enhancing our flesh with technology. Of course, one of the reasons I wasn't slaughtered was that my enhancements aren't visible. But that weird static that prevented the voice chats, that was me. A little device inside my ear that prevents most other devices from picking up my voice. Tape recording works for some reason, but there's still distortion to the magnetic tape. Anyway, we got a little too enthusiastic with our research, and while I never personally took part of it, I heard that the drop that made the cup run over was when some of my less ethical campmates decided to give a lupus-born Garou some cybernetic enhancements, against his will. It wasn't the worst thing our camp had done, to be fair, but it was enough to spark a civil war in our tribe that ended with the extinction of the Cyberdogs and the rise of the Random Interrupts camp to the global stage. I don't hold them any ill will, of course. They saw what we were doing and lashed out in blindness and fear. forgive them, for they know not what they do. Am I right? So that's where we stand. Most other tribes don't like us, and just like with the random interrupts, they hate what they don't understand. Now, with things being the way they are, it's hard for me not to keep talking about how we do things in the tribe. You wanted to know how we're different, so I'll give you a rundown of our customs and our way of handling things. It's hard to hide mass murder in an urban environment. Well, technically it's hard to hide mass murder in our kind of urban environment. We share the city with the Bonars, but where they rub shoulders with the homeless, the outcasts, and the poor, we belong to a more well-off selection of humanity. So when Stacy's sweet 16 birthday extravaganza turns into a gory splatterfest, all live streamed in HD on a YouTube, we need to work our asses off to contain it. It involves money, usually in the form of blackmail, and several layers of targeted online psyops. We need to start doxing people allegedly involved, we need to produce leaked footage that's obviously shopped, and we need to start spreading crackpot conspiracy theories on 4chan and Reddit and, those kind of websites to make the whole thing seem like a giant hoax or a PR stunt or something. Of course, we do all this with a shit-eating grin on our faces, because while poor Stacy's having a panic attack, and is unable to tell any of her 6,000 followers on Instagram about it since we confiscated her smartphone, she's locked up in a room and being guided along by one of our counselors, the rest of us are celebrating the joy of a new cub joining the party. It's exactly the kind of motivation we need to wade waist deep into the shitfest that is online containment protocols. Then of course we need to set the cub up with tutors, homeschooling, edit their records, hell, even record one of those patented I'm so sorry YouTube apology videos, It's a great test for the cub too. She gets to show us her skills and learn the hard way how to clean up a mess like this. I suppose in a way it's kind of a rite of passage, really. We call it the fast track. You're not in the boonies when you're with the Glasswalkers. All the stakes are higher, so we don't have time to deal with fumbling cubs who don't know how to use a VPN or how to hack your parents' Facebook accounts. Other Garou might think we're doing the equivalent of giving a kid a loaded gun, but so far it's worked out fine. You grow up faster in a city. We don't get a lot of cubs who aren't Hamid, for obvious reasons. Garou born are rare, of course, and generally tend to be sheltered from most of their upbringing. You can't exactly have a Krenos walking around anywhere without raising some questions, so most of the time they live with one of our kinfolk and don't get out too much. Thank God for the internet, am I right? A friend of mine invented Krenos-proof keyboards a while back, and from what I've heard, she's been making a mint off them. Point is, though, we take care of our third breed. Most of the time. Some prejudices take a while to get rid of. They don't know a whole lot about socializing either, so they're rarely in any kind of position to be leaders unless they've been using voice filters and leading raids in MMOs or something. I heard that's apparently a thing. Anyway, we also do in fact have the odd lupus as well joining our tribe. They're increasingly rare, and most of the time they're city-born anyway. Maybe born in captivity, or something like that. They're almost considered mascots by some of us, like a lucky sign or whatever, and I can see why some other tribes don't care too much about that. Truth be told, even though they may be raised in our tribe, I don't think they ever feel truly at home. There's only so much you can learn about technology and not being born into it, That being said, both Garou-born and Lupus are always given positions of influence when possible, simply because representation matters. A few Glasswalkers scoff at it, and I can assure you that some tribes, like the Get, consider it tantamount to treason to our kind. But we're a modern tribe with modern solutions. And besides, Garou-born and Lupus have talents we Hamids may never develop. Letting that go to waste, I would say, is the bigger sin. The fast-track cubs are always Hamid. We can't exactly have the others go through the same gauntlet. But even if that's a de facto rite of passage, the actual real deal comes later, and there's a huge variation there. If we think the cub's ready for it, and it's just a formality, they'll be run through a rank 1 or something task, basically menial work to show that they can help the care. Anything rank 6 or above, that goes up to 10, requires supervision by established Garou. Rank 10 rites of passages are some really gnarly shit, and is usually reserved for desperate times, or if the cub really is on someone's shit list. A rank 10 rite of passage would involve attacking a Black Spiral Dancer hive or something. There are pros and cons to this method, of course. Cubs run through low-rank ROPs might come across as untested. We're not sure how they can handle the shit hitting the fan, while a high-rank ROP shows that the cub has at least some experience dealing with it. And once it's all said and done with, there's a sort of graduation ceremony where the cub is inducted into the tribe, given a symbolically important cloak, and is patted on the head for a job well done. Pretty standard fare. Most Garou make the mistake of assuming that we glass walkers are boardroom executives, black hackers, or urban ninjas. I mean, they exist, obviously, but we're so much more of a diverse tribe than that. We got urban primitives, philosophy majors, megacorp scientists, social media sweepers, and so much more. The fact that Andy blinked in surprise as the recording ended mid-sentence and he got up, walking over to the tape deck to remove the cassette, only to realize a thick black smoke was coming out of the player. The machine itself wasn't on fire, yet the tape inside had all but melted, ruining the electronics and spreading an overwhelming stench of burnt plastic in the room. Coughing and with tears in his eyes, Andy tried to open the window to air it and realized that the smell wasn't just coming from the machine. The entire box of cassettes, many of them still unplayed, was erupting in the same smoke like the chimney of a coal smokestack. Fumbling for the window to let it out, Andy could have sworn he heard the tap-tap-tapping of something against the brickwork outside. It sounded like someone was hitting them with a stick of wood repeatedly, humming an all-too-familiar song. The three grandchildren of Cain wait patiently for the time of judgment to arise. Bambi Parsons, a leader with an unbreakable will, Procyon, reborn as a god amongst Cain's angels, and Dougal, whose thirst for blood is matched only by his strength of will and purpose. Their childer, the Methuselah, control our every move through their timeless jihad. They are Her Satanic Majesty Danny, whose mere presence chills the heart, Maximilian S. Hardcastle, a tutor and master of the jihad, Socrates Johnson, a masterful craftsman of stories, Lauren Eason, a trustworthy ally and friend, Alexander Canehurst, inquisitive explorer and steward of the Canehursts, and Snow, who oversees the progress of the council patiently from the shadows. On the council of the Primogen are seated Edward Reed, 06, Ian Nichols, the Black Friar, Brandon Hunter Hayden, the Autumn Alchemist, and Michelle Light, wise leaders and of good judgment. This week, the council would wish to thank the elder Colin Gifford for his continued support. We deeply appreciate your wise counsel. We would also wish to thank the Ancile Idran, who has remained a staunch supporter through times of peace and times of trouble. Naturally, all our Ancile, elders, and neonates receive our gratitude from the bottoms of our hearts. Without your support, this would not be possible. And thank you for watching. The full moon rises, and Gaia's warriors strike out into the night. Tremble, servants of the Wyrm.